In this episode, we complete the transom rebuild of our Grady White and look into the merits of outside versus inside transom repair. G'day, I'm John, an Australian currently living in Bermuda, and this series documents my attempt to restore a 1996 Grady White Adventure 208. After discovering the transom core was wet and rotten, in the last episode we removed the old core and built a template for a new one. The plan was to do an outside transom repair by cutting a 50mm lip around the edge of the fiberglass skin and then removing the centre area. The old core is then removed, but as the 50mm lip prevents the new core going in one piece, new Coosa board core material is cut into puzzle-shaped pieces with layers of 1708 fiberglass cloth between each sheet of Coosa. The shape of the second Coosa sheet is reversed so that the butt joints are not on top of each other. The puzzle design apparently reduces the risk of the joints failing when under flexural or bending stress. I'm not sure if that's true, but it seems logical to me. A major decision in any transom repair is whether to do the repair from the inside or the outside. My last transom rebuild was an Innie, where I basically gutted the interior of the boat and rebuilt everything from the stringers up. It turned out pretty well, I think. I'll include a card if you want to watch that series. In this case, the stringers and deck needed replacing, and the outboard well cap was relatively easy to remove. There is a lot more going on in the aft interior of the Grady. While you can take off the rubbing strip and unscrew the upper cap, you still need to get past the cockpit cap or moulding, I'm not sure what it's called, to get to the inside of the transom. This is all the upper cap, which extends along the gunnels, over the cabin roof and the dashboard and down the other gunnel. What I call the mid or cockpit cap includes the outboard well and quarter seats, the floor or deck area, seat pedestals and storage bins. The mid cap is also glassed onto the bulkheads in the fuel tank well. Under the outboard well and quarter seats is the battery shelf and starboard stringer, with another stringer and oil tank shelf on the port side. The transom, cockpit cap and bulkheads are all glassed together. A moisture meter test of the stringers and the bulkheads in the fuel tank well showed that they were reasonably dry and didn't appear to need replacing. With the stringers apparently sound and so much internal structural material to remove and then reconstruct and finish, an outside repair seemed a sensible option. This was confirmed by several local boat builders and fiberglass repairers. But I've noticed on any outside transom repair videos on YouTube, there is invariably some welcome advice like this. Are they right? Let's see what some of the pros do. Aaron from Born Again Boating has 2 series on transom repairs, both of which are Outies. Andy from Boatworks Today has both an Outie and an Innie transom repair series. Joe Baskin, as far as I could see, has 1 series with an Innie transom repair as part of a larger project. And if you Google fiberglass repair, there are lots of professionals featuring Outie transom repairs on their websites, including West Systems. There are also those that do Innie repairs. So it seems there are two schools of thought on transom repair. Oh, and there's also team pour-in or liquid transom. Though I found it interesting that when searching for transom repair failures online, the few I could find related to pour-in transoms. But things are rarely black and white. Let's review some of the pros and cons of Innie and Outie transom repairs. Pros for an Innie repair include not introducing any weakness into the outer skin, limiting the number of joins in the core. The inner laminates are often thinner, so there's less material needed for the repair, and you don't need to try to match the repair to the rest of the hull's exterior, so there could be less finishing. You should only do an Outie repair if the stringers and internal structure is sound. If there can be much less work involved with an Outie, saving time, materials and money. You don't have to destroy the internals, which can be complex to rebuild, and try to finish and match to the rest of the interior. And indeed, you may introduce other unintended structural weaknesses if you don't rebuild it correctly. You might say, well, I'm not going to do an Outie if it weakens the outside structure. But does it? And if so, by how much? Firstly, I think it's worth noting that plenty of boats with major damage to their outside skins are repaired successfully. When repairing a fiberglass skin, as I understand it, you grind out a bevel on the old material, then layer in glass in a scarf joint. My initial research suggested scarves could be around 1 to 6 or 1 to 12. Further digging seemed to indicate that in wind turbine repairs, 1 to 20 or 1 to 50 can be used. Though in a more recent scientific paper I found, it suggested that while 1 to 6 was suboptimal, a 1 to 12 scarf gave the closest strength to the original material, and a 1 to 20 was statistically no better than the 1 to 12. Link in the description for that paper. So it seems with a 1 to 12 scarf, you can get a fiberglass repair close to the original strength. But there are other important factors that impact the strength of the repair. These include the type of material, e.g. chop strand or 1708, the type of adhesive, the orientation of the fibres, which is a whole other rabbit hole we could go down, the quality of the work, for example, are there lots of air pockets, and the type and thickness of any core material used, to name just a few. And speaking of materials, I believe CSM or chop strand is regarded as the weakest of the fiberglass mats and is not recommended for structural work. Yet I understand that some manufacturers use chop strand sprayed on with a gun to lay up their boats. So how strong are those fiberglass skins, particularly if the work was done on a Friday afternoon? I know the manufacturer's glasswork quality on my previous project boat was pretty bad. My understanding, and I could be wrong, is the outer fiberglass skin mainly provides tensile strength, which stops the skin being stretched or pulled. Flexural strength relates to resistance to bending. If core material is correctly added to the laminate, say 50 millimeters or 2 inches of Coosa and 1708 fiberglass mat, flexural and tensile strength should be significantly increased. In summary, the research I could find suggests an outside transom repair with quality work and materials should not dangerously weaken the structure of the boat. And this seems to be supported by many professionals and DIYers. But what do you reckon? Leave a comment below. With that said, let's get back to the project. I was able to get 2 sheets of 3/4 inch or 19mm Coosa board, and with the template sorted, it was time to transfer the shape onto the Coosa board. The shapes were cut out with a combination of a jigsaw and a circular saw. I found the Coosa really burns through standard jigsaw blades for wood, but found blades for metal lasted much longer. I also had to allow space for the aluminium angle where the upper engine bolts go through. As mentioned, I mirrored the puzzle piece designs so that the joins would be staggered. A dry fit of the two layers shows the staggered joint design. The first layer was then glued in with thickened epoxy. It was secured by a combination of roofing screws and bolts through the engine mounting and the bung or drain hole. Any gaps were filled with thickened epoxy. Between the Coosa sheets, I put in layers of 1708 fiberglass cloth. A shipwright working next to me advised that rather than wrestling with big sheets of the 1708, cut it into strips, wet it out, and then apply it. Then it was time to clean up any excess thickened epoxy and fiberglass before the next layer of Coosa. But the extra 1708 and epoxy on the first layer meant that the second sheet of Coosa wouldn't fit, and a lot of jiggling and fussing about was required. Eventually it was ready to be fitted, then more thickened epoxy and another layer of 1708. Then I needed to prep this surface ready for the outer skin to be reattached. Again, a lot more fussing, making sure it was nice and smooth. The old fiberglass skin also needed to be cleaned up. Then more fussing and trimming, getting it to fit. Then smeared with thickened epoxy and secured again with roofing screws and bolts through the engine mounts and bunghole. Once the epoxy was dry, I got my file sander to feather out the edges and cut some strips of 1708 to make a new scarf joint. I also needed to fill in the holes in the outer skin where I had done my initial exploratory surgery and found that the transom was in such poor condition. Prior to fairing, I drilled out any drain holes and also made some holes for the scuppers. The core samples showed a nice even bond between the layers of Coosa and 1708. Then it was time to sand before fairing. Then more sanding and more fairing, rinse and repeat. I took the rubbing strip off so I could prime the transom. As shown earlier, this exposed the screws for the upper cap if it needed to be removed. Then to protect the epoxy, I put on 4 layers of primer. Apparently, the first layer needs to be brushed on and the next layers can be rolled on. With, of course, sanding between each layer of primer. And then it was done, at least for now. Still have to work out what I'm doing with the top coat, the outside fittings in the engine, but in terms of this transom series, that's the finish. And given what I now know about Outie and Innie transom repairs, should I have done an Innie? I don't think so. The stringers and bulkheads were still sound, and the amount of internal structure to cut through to get to the transom would have made the job very long and very expensive. Frankly, not worth it for this boat. For now, I'll just monitor it and look for any signs of fatigue. And as Andy from Boatworks today says, the great thing about fiberglass is you can just grind it out and start again. Have you done a transom repair? What type was it and how is it holding up? Please leave a comment down below and let us know.